The grocery store had been too bright, too crowded, and too noisy for Emma's tired mind. She had worked a long shift that day and almost skipped the errand, but Ryan insisted they go together. He was 16 now, tall and lanky, with a surprising sense of responsibility that sometimes startled her. "We'll get it done faster together," he had said, grinning as he grabbed the shopping list from her hand. And he was right. They moved through the aisles quickly, tossing milk, cereal, pasta, and snacks into the cart. But even efficiency couldn't erase Emma's exhaustion. She loved her son fiercely, but nights like these reminded her of the years she had carried everything on her shoulders. Bills, schedules, meals, his schoolwork, the house repairs, every piece of life landed on her plate. She never complained aloud, but the weight was heavy. By the time they reached the checkout, Emma's patience was thin. She forced a polite smile for the cashier, swiped her card, and gathered the bags. Ryan helped without being asked, balancing 3 at once as if they weighed nothing. Emma thought, not for the first time, how much he resembled his father, not in looks, but in the way he carried himself, steady and dependable. Yet, unlike his father, Ryan stayed. The sliding glass doors opened with a hiss, and they stepped into the cool night air. The parking lot stretched out in long rows of cars, the asphalt glistening faintly under the streetlights after an earlier rain. A breeze brushed against Emma's face, carrying the sharp smell of wet pavement. She inhaled deeply, grateful for the quiet after the chaos inside. They reached their car and Emma popped the trunk. Together, they loaded the bag scans, stacked neatly, bread set carefully on top, eggs tucked safely in the corner. Emma closed the trunk with a heavy thud and pressed her palms against the cool metal for a moment, gathering herself. Her body was tired, but it was more than that. Her heart felt heavy in a way she couldn't name. Ryan moved to the passenger side and opened the door. But instead of sliding in, he turned back to her. His expression had shifted. The casual grin he usually wore was gone, replaced by something more serious. "Mom," said softly, almost hesitant. Emma looked up, brushing a strand of hair from her eyes. "What is it, honey?" she asked, expecting some small question about snacks or weekend plans. But Ryan stepped closer, lowering his voice as if the quiet parking lot had ears. "You don't have to do this all alone anymore." The word startled her. For a moment, she didn't understand. She tilted her head, her brows knitting. "What do you mean?" He swallowed, his gaze steady. "I see how tired you are. You've been carrying everything for years. But I also see something else." Emma's chest tightened. A strange unease crept in. "Ryan?" She started, but he shook his head gently, cutting her off. "I know you've been hurting, and I know you like him." The world seemed to pause. Emma blinked, her breath catching. Like him. Her mind scrambled to process what her son had just said. He spoke the words so simply, as though naming something obvious. But to Emma, it felt like a secret ripped open under the fluorescent Streetlight. Her first instinct was denial. She wanted to laugh, to tell him he was imagining things. But her throat felt dry, and her heart thudded hard against her ribs. How could Ryan possibly know? She had never said a word. She had never even allowed herself to admit it fully, even in her own thoughts. Ryan's expression softened, his voice barely above a whisper. "You should give yourself a chance. You deserve it." Emma stared at him, speechless. The cool night air seemed to press in closer, the hum of a distant car engine fading into nothing. In that moment, her son looked older than 16, wiser in a way that unnerved her. He wasn't just a boy anymore. He was someone who could see her, not just the mother who made meals and paid bills, but the woman who longed quietly, who carried invisible scars. She wanted to ask him questions. What did he mean? How much did he know? Why was he saying this now? But the words stuck in her throat. Ryan gave her a small, almost knowing smile, then stepped into the passenger seat, closing the door with a soft click. Emma stood frozen by the driver's side, her hand hovering near the handle, her heart pounding. She stared at the asphalt, at the reflection of the overhead lights and the small puddles scattered across the lot. Her son's whisper replayed again and again in her mind. "I know you like him." Her pulse quickened as a face rose in her. Memory, the calm eyes, the steady voice, the warm smile of Daniel. A man she had spoken to only a few times. Yet someone who lingered in her thoughts more than she dared to admit. She shook her head, almost angrily, as though she could scatter the thought like dust. This wasn't possible. She didn't have time for feelings, for second chances, for hope. She had built a life around responsibility, around stability, not longing. And yet her son had seen it. He had spoken aloud the truth. She had buried. Emma finally slid into the driver's seat, gripping the wheel tightly. Ryan was silent beside her, looking out the window, giving her space. She started the car, the headlights cutting across the lot as she pulled out. She glanced at her son, his face calm but unreadable. Part of her wanted to scold him for prying, for saying too much. But another part of her, the part she couldn't silence, felt an ache of gratitude. Because beneath the shock, there was something else too. Her son's whisper had opened a door she thought was locked forever. And now, she couldn't stop wondering what might be waiting on the other side. The drive home was quiet. Emma kept her eyes on the road, pretending to concentrate on the traffic lights and the curve of the streets. But inside her mind was anything but calm. Ryan's words echoed over and over, sharp, surprising yet strangely comforting. "You deserve it." He had said it like he truly believed it. And that belief unsettled her. She parked in their driveway and carried the groceries inside, moving on autopilot. Ryan helped unpack without a word, humming softly to himself. He didn't press her, didn't explain what he meant, didn't even look at her for answers. That silence gave her space, but it also made her thoughts louder later. When the house was still, Emma sat on the living room couch with a cup of tea. The steam curled up into the dim light, and she let her shoulders sag. The house felt too big in moments like this, the walls echoing with a loneliness she never admitted to anyone. She stared at the blank television screen, but her mind was far away, drifting back to the first time she saw Daniel. It had been months ago, maybe longer, at the hardware store. A simple errand. She needed supplies to fix a leaky faucet. She hated plumbing, hated standing in those aisles filled with tools and parts that seemed like a foreign language. But she had gone anyway. And that's when Daniel appeared. He had been in the same aisle studying a shelf of fittings. Tall, broad-shouldered, with graying hair that gave him an air of experience rather than age. His voice had been steady when he asked if she needed help. Emma had been startled at first, her natural instinct to decline. But something in his tone disarmed her. Polite, gentle, not pushy. She admitted she wasn't sure which part she needed, and he smiled, taking one from the shelf, explaining how it worked with calm precision. That smile stayed with her longer than it should have. She had thanked him quickly and left, embarrassed by how her chest fluttered like a girl's. She told herself it was nothing, just a kind stranger. But the memory lingered. Weeks later, she saw him again, this time at the school fundraiser. He was there alone, just like her, browsing the silent auction tables. Their eyes met across the room, and he gave her a small nod of recognition. Emma's heart had skipped. They only exchanged a few words that night, casual comments about the crowd, the weather, but the connection felt deeper than the conversation allowed. After that, fate kept weaving him into her life. At the grocery store, standing in line behind her. At the coffee shop near her office, waiting for his order. Each time his presence stirred something in her, a warmth she hadn't felt in years. She never admitted it, not even to herself. She had locked away that part of her heart after her husband left. Love had become dangerous, a risk she couldn't take again. Raising Ryan had been her only focus. And yet Daniel's face returned to her in quiet moments, like now. When the house was hushed and the night stretched too long, she set her tea down, pressing her palms against her knees. The truth was undeniable. She liked him. She admired the way his kindness seemed effortless, the way his eyes carried both strength and gentleness. But what unsettled her most was Ryan's awareness. How had her son seen what she fought so hard to hide? Her mind replayed the parking lot scene. Ryan's whisper so confident it had pierced her walls. You don't have to do this all alone anymore. Did he want her to move on? Was he giving her permission to let go of the past? Emma rubbed her temples, frustration mingling with longing. She wasn't sure she was ready. But the memory of Daniel, his smile, his steady voice, the way he looked at her like she mattered kept breaking through her defenses. The next morning, Emma woke early, but the weight in her chest hadn't lifted. Ryan was already up, eating cereal at the table. He greeted her casually, as if last night hadn't happened, as if he hadn't cracked open the part of her heart she kept locked. She poured herself coffee, trying to act normal. But every glance at her son reminded her of his words. On the drive to school, Ryan finally spoke. "You're thinking about it, aren't you?" Emma gripped the wheel. "About what?" she asked, though she knew about him. Ryan said simply. His tone wasn't teasing. It was steady, almost protective. "It's okay, Mom. You don't have to hide it from me." Her throat tightened. She wanted to deny it, to brush it off. But something in his calm voice gave her the courage she had lacked for so long. She exhaled slowly. "Maybe I am." Ryan smiled faintly, looking out the window. "Good. I just want you to be happy. That's all." His words hit her harder than she expected. For years, she had been the one protecting him, sheltering him from pain. Now here he was offering her the same gift. It was both humbling and heartbreaking. That day at work, Emma couldn't concentrate. Daniel's face appeared every time she closed her eyes. She remembered the way his voice had lowered when he explained the faucet part. The way he had leaned slightly closer but never invaded her space. She remembered the warmth in his eyes at the fundraiser, the way it had felt like he saw her. Not just another parent in the crowd. The truth was becoming harder to deny. She wanted to see him again. That evening, when she picked up Ryan from school, she spotted something that made her pulse race. Across the street near the cafe, Daniel was walking out with a cup of coffee in hand. The sight caught her off guard, his easy stride, his quiet confidence. He hadn't noticed her, but she couldn't tear her eyes away. Ryan saw him too. He leaned closer and whispered, "There's your chance." Emma's heart skipped. Heat rushed to her cheeks. She quickly drove away, too flustered to even think about stopping. But as they turned the corner, her son's words lingered. "There's your chance." That night, lying awake in bed, Emma stared at the ceiling. For years, she had convinced herself she didn't deserve another chance. But now, with Ryan urging her forward, with Daniel's memory filling her heart, she felt the faint stirrings of hope. Maybe, just maybe, her son was right. And maybe the whisper in the parking lot was only the beginning. Emma had avoided the cafe the next day, convincing herself she was too busy. But the truth was simpler. She was afraid. Seeing Daniel across the street had stirred something deep inside her, something she wasn't ready to confront. But life has a way of placing people in front of you when you least expect it. It happened on a Wednesday afternoon. Emma had left work a little early, her mind heavy from deadlines and decisions. She stopped by the local bookstore, a quiet place she often went to clear her head. The smell of paper, the soft shuffle of pages, the comet always soothed her. She walked slowly through the aisles, letting her fingers brush the spines of novels. Then she heard a voice. "Steady, familiar? I didn't know you liked this place too." Emma froze. She turned, and there he was. Daniel stood a few steps away, holding a paperback in his hand, his eyes meeting hers with quiet warmth. The suddenness of it made her heart jolt, but she forced a smile. "I come here sometimes," she said softly. "It's peaceful." He nodded, glancing around. "That's exactly why I come too." For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them wasn't awkward, it was charged, alive with all the words they hadn't yet said. Emma's pulse raced. Daniel broke it gently. "Have you found anything good today?" She shook her head. "Just wandering. Not sure what I'm looking for." He smiled faintly. "Story of my life." The comment was casual, but Emma felt the layers in it. She wanted to ask what he meant, but the vulnerability in his eyes stopped her. Instead, she found herself asking, "What do you usually read?" He held up the book in his hand. History, mostly. Sometimes biographies. But every now and then, a novel sneaks in. Emma chuckled lightly. So you're practical with a hint of imagination? Daniel's smile deepened. Something like that? And you? Novels, she admitted. Stories that make me feel something. The moment stretched. His eyes softened as if her answer revealed more than she realized. Emma felt exposed but also seen. Truly seen. They walked together toward the front of the store, their steps slow, their conversation gentle. It felt natural, like they'd done it before. Yet beneath the calm, Emma's heart trembled. She hadn't allowed herself to be this open in years. At the counter, Daniel paid for his book. Then, before leaving, he turned to her. His voice was calm but careful, as though weighing every word. Would you like to grab a coffee? No pressure, just conversation. Emma's first instinct was to decline. Her walls shot up, rehearsed excuses flooding her mind. But Ryan's whisper returned to her. You don't have to do this alone anymore. She took a breath. Coffee sounds nice. Daniel's relief was subtle but visible. He led the way, and soon they were seated at a small table near the window of the cafe across the street. The afternoon sun cast a soft glow through the glass, wrapping them in warmth at first. Their conversation stayed light. Books, work, the weather. But soon it shifted. Daniel spoke about his life, his career in construction, the projects that kept him busy but never quite fulfilled. Emma shared bits of her own life, her office job, the challenges of raising Ryan alone. The more they spoke, the more Emma felt the years of distance between her and the world shrink. She laughed at his quiet humor, and he listened with genuine interest when she spoke. There was no performance, no pretense, just honesty. At one point, Daniel grew thoughtful. He stirred his coffee absent-mindedly, then looked at her. You know, I've seen you around town more than a few times. I always wondered what your story was. Emma hesitated. That was the question she avoided from everyone. Yet here with him, she felt strangely safe. My story, she repeated, stalling. He nodded gently. If you want to share, Kara's eyes dropped to her cup. It's complicated. But the short version is I've been on my own for a long time. Raising my son, trying to keep things together. Some days I do fine. Some days... She trailed off, her throat tight. Daniel's expression softened. Not with pity, but with understanding. That sounds hard, Emma nodded. It is. But Ryan, he makes it worth it. Here's everything. Daniel's gaze lingered, steady and warm. I can see that. You talk about him with so much love. Emma smiled faintly, touched by his sincerity. For a long moment, they just looked at each other, the air between them thick with something unspoken. It was Emma who finally looked away, her heart thundering. She wasn't used to this too, being seen, heard, valued. She felt both alive and terrified. When they finished their coffee, Daniel walked her back to the parking lot, the same place where Ryan had whispered the words that started all this. The coincidence wasn't lost on Emma. They paused by her car. Daniel's hands were in his pockets, his posture relaxed but his eyes searching hers. I'm glad we ran into each other, he said quietly. Emma swallowed. Me too. Silence stretched again, but it wasn't empty. It was full of possibility of questions neither dared to ask. Finally, Daniel smiled, a small, almost hesitant smile. Maybe we'll see each other again. Her instinct was to guard herself, to retreat. But Ryan's voice echoed again in her memory. There's your chance. She nodded. I'd like that. Daniel's relief was clear. He gave a small nod, then stepped back, giving her space, respecting the boundaries she wasn't even sure she had set. As Emma slid into her car, her hands trembled on the steering wheel. She watched him walk away, his figure steady against the fading light. Her heart ached in a way that was both painful and hopeful, for the first time in years. The possibility of something more didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a gift. But as she drove home, doubts crept in. Was she ready? Could she risk her heart again? And most of all, what if Ryan's encouragement came with expectations she wasn't sure she could meet? She pulled into the driveway, the questions swirling in her mind. Inside, Ryan was waiting. He looked up as she entered, his eyes sharp, almost knowing. "You saw him, didn't you?" he asked. Emma froze, stunned. Ryan's smile was faint but certain. "I knew you would." Her breath caught. The world felt like it was shifting beneath her feet, and she didn't know whether to hold on or let go. And in that moment, she realized this wasn't just her story anymore. It was theirs. That night, Emma lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her thoughts circling endlessly. She could still see Daniel's face in the bookstore, hear his voice in the cafe, feel the weight of his eyes in the parking lot. It had been so long since someone had looked at her that way, as if she mattered. And yet, the memory filled her with both warmth and fear. Her life had been built on safety, routines, walls. Protecting herself from heartbreak had become second nature. But now, after one unexpected encounter, those walls had cracks. She turned onto her side, clutching the pillow, asking herself questions she had avoided for years. Could she risk opening her heart again? Was it fair to Ryan? Or was it exactly what he wanted for her to move forward, to stop living in shadows? The next morning, she tried to carry on as usual. She made breakfast, packed Ryan's lunch, drove him to school. But Ryan was sharper than most kids his age. He kept glancing at her from the passenger seat, as if he could see right through her. Finally, halfway to school, he said, "You're thinking about him, aren't you?" Emma gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Ryan, it's okay," he said softly, cutting her off. "I'm glad you are." Emma blinked, caught off guard. "You are." He nodded, looking out the window. "You've been carrying everything by yourself for so long. You never complain, but I see it. You deserve someone who makes you smile when I'm not around. I want that for you." His words silenced her. She wanted to reply, but her throat was too tight. All she could do was reach over and squeeze his hand at the red light. He didn't say anything more, but the quiet between them was enough. That afternoon, Emma stood in her kitchen, staring at her phone. Daniel's number wasn't in her contacts. They hadn't exchanged details. Their meeting had been by chance, by timing. If she wanted to see him again, she'd have to trust that chance or create her own. Her heart raced as she made a decision. She grabbed her keys and told herself she was only running errands. But her car seemed to know where it was going. Her hands drove her toward the cafe, toward the possibility of seeing him again. When she arrived, her chest tightened. The cafe was busy, people in line, conversations buzzing. And there he was, Daniel, sitting near the back, a coffee cup in one hand, reading a book in the other. Emma froze in the doorway. She could leave, pretend she hadn't seen him, retreat back into her safe, lonely world. But then Ryan's voice echoed again in her memory. "You don't have to do this alone anymore." With a deep breath, she walked inside. Daniel looked up, his eyes widening in pleasant surprise. He stood slightly, as if it were instinct, a polite gesture that made Emma's heart flutter. "Emma," he said warmly. "Didn't expect to see you again so soon?" She smiled nervously. "Neither did I. But here I am." He gestured to the seat across from him. "Would you like to join me?" She nodded, her legs trembling as she sat down. The conversation began carefully, polite words exchanged like cautious steps. But soon it deepened, flowing the way it had before, natural and easy. They spoke about their days, their lives, their small frustrations. Emma admitted how exhausting it had been to juggle work and motherhood. Daniel shared how building houses sometimes felt empty if there was no one to come home to afterward. Then there was silence again. Not the kind that pushed people apart, but the kind that pulled them closer. Daniel looked at her, his expression steady. "I don't want to scare you off, Emma, but I'll be honest. I like being around you, and I'd like to see you again if you'll let me." Emma's chest tightened. The words she'd feared and longed for at the same time were out in the open now. She hesitated, staring at her hands. "It's not that simple. I've been alone for a long time, and I've gotten used to it. Maybe too used to it. Letting someone in again feels Dangerous. Daniel leaned forward slightly, his voice gentle. I understand. I'm not asking for promises. Just time. Just a chance. Emma's eyes lifted to his, and in them she saw no pressure, no demand, just honesty. It was enough to make her heart ache. Before she could answer, her phone buzzed. Ryan's name lit up the screen. She excused herself and answered, stepping just outside the cafe. Hey, Mom. Ryan's voice came through bright and casual. Are you okay? Emma swallowed hard. Yes. Why? Just checking. You sounded different this morning. Her lips trembled. Ryan, can I ask you something? Sure. If I let someone new into our lives, would that bother you? There was a pause. Then his voice came calm and certain. No, Mom, it wouldn't bother me. It would make me happy. I want you to have someone when I'm not here. I don't want you to be lonely. Tears burned her eyes. She whispered, Thank you. When she hung up, she stood frozen on the sidewalk, her heart pounding. The decision that had felt impossible now seemed clear. Ryan was ready. Daniel was patient. The only one holding back was her. She walked back into the cafe. Daniel looked up, concern flickering across his face. She sat down, her breath shaking, and then she spoke. Her voice quiet but firm. I'd like that too. A chance. Daniel's smile was slow, steady, but it reached his eyes. Relief washed over his face. Then that's enough. They sat there for a long time, sipping coffee, speaking in low tones, sometimes laughing. Sometimes just sitting in comfortable silence. For the first time in years, Emma felt the weight on her chest ease. When she left the cafe, the sky was glowing with evening light. She drove home, her heart lighter than it had been in a long time. Ryan was waiting by the window, and when she walked inside, he didn't ask questions. He just smiled knowingly. Emma wrapped her arms around him, holding him close. Thank you, she whispered. For what? He asked. For reminding me I don't have to do this alone anymore. Ryan hugged her back, strong for his age. You don't, Mom. You never did. And as the sun set outside, Emma realized the whisper in the parking lot had changed more than she ever imagined. It hadn't just given her hope. It had given her permission to live again.